Yeah, yeah. I don't have much
Um,
to add. It's just
yeah, no, I
yeah,
get that.
that's a beautiful, beautiful experience. Yeah, but yeah, as I said, because it's so rich in its like complexity from like a
Mhm.
filming standpoint,
Yeah,
storytelling, performance. I think it needs a rewatch, and I have to say, like as I said, I feel like the sound and scoring aspect of it, it was the one that I felt the least connected to. I just felt like not in a bad way. I just felt like I had to pay attention to other
yeah,
things.
that makes complete
I
sense.
was like, shit, like, okay, I need to go back to
I
that. And just,
mean,
yeah, and just feel like, because you mentioned how, like, you felt like Zimmer's work felt different there. I don't want to say disagree. I don't even remember the score very well.
no,
So
I
it's like, I
I
have to
totally
go
get it.
back. Yeah, I have
Because
to go back.
there are so many aspects to this movie that uh demand your attention,
Exactly. Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
much more than, I mean, um I think it's why also the sound design in particular stands out so well, is because it's
Mhm.
such a different form. And you also have, Fraser's visuals to be to just like
Yeah.
mouth wide open stare at, and you also have these excellent performances, and you have a whole world being introduced to you. I think that if you ask most people, if you ask them like, "Did you read the book?" I think I'd like to think the majority will say no. So there is that. You have to go into that with that idea of like, all right, well, we have to inform the viewer. We have to also not make informing them boring, which is always
Mhm.
a fucking tightrope to cross, because the majority of the time when people try to give exposition, it's fucking boring. But
Mhm.
in this one, injected through performance, and it's injected through visuals and through the way that the story is told. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah. 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 I just love him. Like,
It's so good.
yeah, I'm just rooting for him. Yeah, he's like an underdog
Yeah,
because
that's exactly it.
he's not playing the game. He's not like
Mhm.
super arrogant like Tarantino, like, or he's not like trying to prove anything. I feel like the Coen brothers maybe sometimes they try to prove or make a point where I'm
Yeah,
like, just take a step back, man. Like, it's fine. You, you've done Fargo. It's fine. It's good
yeah.
enough. Like, sure, you can take a break. With
It's why
him,
it's
yeah,
no.
with him, it's just like he literally, in a way, I have to say, based on what I've seen from him, I feel like in a way he does feel a bit of a, I don't say newbie from like the craft perspective, because he's very
Mhm.
confident now,
Yeah,
but he doesn't feel very comfortable in terms of like where he sits in the filmmaker auteur arena,
yeah.
where like, oh well, I feel like I have to explain myself. So hopefully with the part two, and I have to say he's quite young, so he can like easily have, 7 to 10 more films under his radar, unless he
Absolutely.
takes the like Ridley Scott approach where he like makes film until he's
Ridley
fucking
Scott
200.
is in his 80s. I think he like
Honestly,
just recently turned 83, and he's got The Last Duel and House of Gucci come like within like 3 months.
honestly, Tim, you need to answer on how does he
I,
still do it.
I think I mean, and he's also got, didn't he produce the Alien show, the new Alien show coming out soon? And the guy's a fucking workhorse. Some of these guys, I mean, how about Eastwood? Eastwood is like 95, and he's constantly working on something, even if, depending on quality, he's always putting something out.
I know I am 28 and my memory is awful at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know, I forget names, numbers. Like, how does this guy do it? I have no idea. So
It's
yeah,
very admirable, but it's also
okay.
a little concerning. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, like a doppelganger anywhere. Um, yeah. So I don't know, for whatever reason. Even though I have to be honest, I didn't like the very first film that I liked, really liked from Villeneuve was enemy,
Mhm.
because I watched Polytechnique quite recently and I failed to connect with it. I was like, okay, cool. I can see I can see him in the film, but I was like, this
Mhm.
doesn't feel like something that I actually enjoy. Um, but he has so much to give in that regard, like in the grand scheme of cinema. So I'm really rooting for him. But at the same time, yeah, I just hope he doesn't get lost in the cog machine that is like
Yeah,
film studios and Warner Brothers.
it's why I couldn't relate to him more when he talks about how this is his most mainstream movie,
Yeah.
which is it is if you take it'll always have this grander sense of scope because that's his aesthetic style, his tangible style of filmmaking will always have this like idea of like I'm looking at a tidal wave
Mm-hmm.
of a film, but he couldn't. He's exactly right. This is the movie that it's like, hey, if you take that person who you wouldn't take them to see Arrival, but you would take someone who's more casual to see this, and then I think that this would capture them in
Yeah.
that way of this could very well be like a new introduction to Villeneuve for people, more so than Prisoners, because of how grounded and uh, star-studded the cast of Prisoners was with Hugh Jackman and all of them. And even then, though, Prisoners was 2013, I think, and even then, it's like a lot of people are getting into this.
Mhm.
That's a very grounded human narrative, and more is just not sci-fi. And so to have something this outer world type sci-fi be this manageable as a viewer, I think is very special. But to hear him say it's his most mainstream is like, oh, so that it's going to be on a different vein than his other movies.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I'm assuming I mean, he's experiencing a lot more pressure from the studio, from a streaming service perspective that we can't quite see, because they have the numbers, they have the metrics, retention,
Mhm.
whatever the fuck they're tracking. And yeah, I feel like whether, even though, if I'm honest with you, as you said, like the CEO has kind of given the green light to the
Yeah.
second part, but like he's sensing that pressure for the viability of part two
Mhm.
ultimately. So yeah, I can really empathize with him. But yeah, I just wish that, to be honest with you, I just wish he had the better publicist in a way, or like someone who could
Yeah.
nurture his image a bit more, because like when people think about Interstellar, they know that Nolan made that film. But
Yeah.
like with Prisoners, which is such a like loved film, I don't think anyone knows that he did
I
that.
agree. I think the most casual person will have no clue.
There's a branding problem, which I feel like he needs to overcome.
And it's interesting because if you have someone who has seen all his movies, it's such a distinct
That's really true. Yeah.
it's such a distinct fingerprint. You will automatically know, which is why I said earlier, like if you didn't tell me who directed it and you showed it to me, he would automatically come up because it's so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
his himself. And
Mhm.
it's just it's one of those guys where it's like, dude, you should have. It's like seeing a good comedian that isn't getting enough eyes, or
Yeah.
seeing or hearing a great fucking song that has not gone crazy yet, and then you
Yeah.
hear what's a popular song and it's like, that shit's popular, how is this not getting more views,
Mm-hmm.
um and if this is I don't want to say his attempt, because that's not what he's trying to do. He's trying to tell a story. But I mean, if this is how that attempt at reaching, I guess, more people, if this is that, it feels like it. It certainly feels like this is the one where and you have to tell people who didn't read the book. You don't worry, you don't have to have read the book. You can watch
Mhm.
this without having any, like 200 pages of history to think about. But yeah,
Mhm.
oh God.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job in terms of not putting too much um yeah, pressure into people reading the book. Or I don't feel like, to be honest with you, I don't feel like the mainstream audience even knows that there is a book based on this.
That's
Like,
what I
yeah,
mean.
so I
Yeah.
think that's good. I think that's healthy. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my! I saw someone. This guy hilariously tweeted. He when he was watching Dune, as soon as he walked outside, he heard someone say the book was better, and he was like, "Movies are back!" Like the idea
Yeah.
of the experience is back because that annoying, ridiculous conversation is sparking up again. And it's exactly right. I think that I keep saying them like the more casual viewer, but I try to separate my process from the idea of like if someone was walking on the street, and I did this a lot when I was younger, was like if I walked by a movie theater and I had nothing to do, I was watching a movie. Didn't matter what it was, I would go in and
Yeah.
one ticket to whatever was at this time. And I think of if someone were to do that, or if it was a Friday night and you were with a group of friends, uh, you don't want to have that mental restriction of you don't want to, as a filmmaker, put that on someone to be like, oh well, you didn't see the book, you guess you're not going to enjoy it as much. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
he doesn't do that very well in this way, and
Mhm.
it's very free from the mental fucking restraints of, oh well, I
Mhm.
don't understand this because you know what, I don't need to know everything right now. That's also another kind of very frustrating criticism I've seen is oh well, it's so open-ended. And I was like, well, because it's part one.
Yeah.
It's leading, it's giving you questions for answers later on. And I've been saying, like, if they released Fellowship of the Ring today, there are people going, so they what do they do with the ring now? And it's like, well, Sam and Frodo are off to fucking Mount Doom. It's like, oh well, they should have showed that now. It's like, but that's not how the story's being told. It makes no sense. And that's why like I don't think, and I don't know because I was not conscious back then enough, but I don't think people were like, oh well, what's gonna happen? What are they? What is the ring about? And the idea of like watching Fellowship of the Ring and walking out and being like, that was incomplete. So yeah, because it's part one of a trilogy.
Yeah.
That's the most baseless criticism to me. Is it's like, oh, you didn't have all the answers, me neither, because it's the first part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like Warner's did a good job in terms of promoting the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Because like I can again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate of just being like, assuming there's just like someone who's just walking down the street, they they just want to see a film and they see the first installment. They're like, whatever, I don't give a fuck. I just want to spend a couple of hours watching a film. And they, as you said, they're just left with so many questions because the film is intended, it's supposed to leave
Mhm.
you with many questions because there's a sequel coming up. Do you feel like Warner's did a good job in terms of like making it very clear that, hey, you're here for the long term? Which I feel like that they did very well for Harry Potter, if I'm
Yeah,
honest. But I'm not sure what they did with Lord of the Rings.
I think. Well, I think just through sheer source material, I think Lord of the Rings was much more mainstream than
Mhm.
Dune. Definitely, I think more people had read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings um, at that point. But also, it was, I think, just solely. It's weird to say. I mean, it's weird from my point to say, but it was a different time. It was
Yeah.
very much a different form of film promotion then. It was before being able to have ads show up in someone's hand.
Hmm.
And I think that the majority of promotion then was, the story of Frodo and Sam, right? And I think if you ask someone like today, have you read the source material of something? The majority will say no. And if you ask someone 20 years ago, I think the majority would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the sheer weight of certain source material. Frank Herbert is like the grandfather of the majority of sci-fi today. But I think if you told people which name do you recognize, that one or J.R.R. Tolkien? More people are going to attach to Tolkien. But I think that also comes with fantasy. I think fantasy will always have an instant empathetic link to people more than sci-fi, unless you're talking about Star Wars.
That was a question. I don't have about it. I've watched every single one of them, but yeah, I don't remember how the studio promoted the franchise.
Was it even Warner Brothers for Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
I don't know what, that's so strange to me. That's so, it feels so.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was working on it from a catalog perspective. So when I came on to help Warner Brothers with their catalog social media strategy, they were like, oh shit, so these films are 10 years old now. Can you just make them feel relevant again? So like, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was such an interesting and difficult ask. But yeah, this is why I asked you, because I had no idea what was the zeitgeist like around that kind of franchise at the time.
But also at the time, you also had that one-up point of being able to say we're making these back to back, and we don't know right now if this is even, if any pre-production is in place. So it's a very similar conversation with very different moving pieces, and it's very interesting. But it's also like you almost want it to kind of just get the fuck in there. You know what I mean? Get started. Get fucking started. Because you know what? It's very, very hard, and they know this. It's very hard to get people's attention now, right now, in this time, to have someone sit down for a couple hours, and especially when the alternative is they can stay home and not you think that there would be a more proactive jumping off point from them, but it's very disconcerting to see not that. And that's why I said, like, you kind of hope that, I hope I'm kept in the dark more often than I think I am when it comes to these kinds of decisions. I want to think that there's someone back behind a curtain being like, all right, let's move some shit around. But that's just from the hopeful side of me. And then the other side of me is like, yeah, no, they're just waiting to see the dollar. And if the dollar mark is enough, and if there's enough, clicks on specific websites, then yeah, they'll do it. If not, let's move on to the next project. And
yeah,
we've talked for 2.5 hours.
That's insane.
It doesn't feel like it,
which makes sense, because honestly, like, we've been following each other for such a long time. I feel like we have so many things in common.
Yeah, that's also part of it, is like, I also don't talk with you as much as I want to on Instagram, because there's also part of me being like, she's busy, she's got a fucking job, don't fucking like constantly pester her about little things or whatever.
That's totally fine. Totally fine.
But it's very much that. It's like, this is fucking fun,
I think we should keep doing this more regularly. Like, we should make this
absolutely. I mean, you also have this like constant step on me where it's like, a lot of these movies you've already seen. Like, I'm seeing Last Night in Soho on Thursday, and you've seen that already as well, haven't you?
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah. But to be fair, that's a temporary step up because of London Film Festival. But
but I mean, it exists. Yeah.
What do you think of Edgar Wright?
He's
Baby Driver.
Baby Driver. I mean, I've it's interesting. I've started to not like Baby Driver as much as I've rewatched it.
Okay.
After a couple of rewatches, I'm like, all right. Watching it in theaters. I walked out of that experience pretty speechless. But I think that is a movie that I cannot watch at home, if that makes sense. I mean, obviously, I think it makes sense after this entire conversation. But but everything else, the first movie after a year and a half that I saw was the re-release, the 10-year re-release of Scott Pilgrim. In the Dolby Cinema release.
I love that film.
I couldn't have. I was telling myself, like, you couldn't have picked a better movie to go back to movie theaters for. You know what I mean? And that was, he's one of my. I think I love directors that kind of. I'll always root for the directors that even if it's like, I don't know, everyone shits on like Adam Sandler and all that, and his terrible movies he makes with his friends. He's financing his own movies with his friends, and there's something so just like warm and like comfortable about that idea. So to see Edgar Wright do that with, like, to see a much more like expressive and creative director do that kind of stuff, where you get together with, you know, Simon Pegg or Nick Frost, or you get together with like a whole cast of interesting characters and then tell a story in an interesting way. I think that's why he's definitely one of my favorites. And the only other time I can think of, like, I love the Coen brothers because they're the Coen brothers, but the only recent release of theirs that I watched that really kind of like floored me was the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Okay.
You seen that?
Yeah.
I
haven't seen
got
it yet. Yeah.
It's very.
Yeah. No, I just haven't.
Oh.
I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
It's very it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's very strange, but that's why I like it. And it's very experimental. And I watched it. I got my school was giving out passes for it, and I got it. And I was going to bring someone with me, and luckily they said no. So I had an extra ticket, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just go alone. And because I went alone, it was very crowded because I guess they had given out too many of those seats. Because I had went alone, they were looking for single seats around, and the only single seat that they saw was in the front row. So I got to sit in the front row, and then it had it was a Q&A after, and I think Joel Cohen was there, and it was very. I think that the experience surrounding the movie also helped me feel more into the movie than I think I would have been if it had just been like a screening, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely have to do another one, a bunch more of these where we just fucking talk.
I know. We should turn this into a monthly thing because we have so much to talk about. Yeah. No, absolutely. You know, I haven't watched this one from Coen Brothers. Like, it's interesting. I have a complex relationship with them because there are quite a few films and I'm like, yeah, I guess, but I haven't quite connected with them quite emotionally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Burn After Reading, it's one of my favorite films of all time. Even though I have to say, I feel like Brad Pitt makes the film. He's just like another level on his own.
That's
so
what
good.
I mean. Like, if you ask someone, that's the kind of movie of a set of directors or of a director who have a large, you know, filmography, and there will always be people who go Pulp Fiction, Interstellar, what was the one? Fight Club. And then the one for the Coens is always going to be The Big Lebowski. And that makes complete sense. It's the Big Lebowski. But there's always that one from the group that's like the black sheep, where it's like, if I recommend any movie to someone, it'll be this specific one that does not get like enough love. And like Tarantino, it's Jackie Brown. I think that's one of his best.
Yes,
Jackie Brown is fucking incredible. Or, you know, The Prestige. And then I think of Fincher. And I think that the one I would pick for Fincher will always be The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, when it comes to his filmography. That, I mean, Social Network is one of the greatest films ever fucking made, because you have the combo of Sorkin and Fincher and a great cast. But that's not like, even then, it's like Fight Club is the one where it's like, hey bro, Fight Club, you know what I mean? You can tell someone Fight Club and they think about it, but there will always be that one where it's like, hey man, like, if you want to kind of almost reintroduce yourself to this director or to this set of directors, you watch it. Burn After Reading is exactly that one where it's like, oh man, like, you got to see this movie if you really want to kind of like experience the aesthetic and the directors on screen. That's exactly that. Oh my god, this is so much fun.
Yeah, and I think, was it Joel? Is it Joel that's married to Frances McDormand?
I think so.
I think so, because I mean, he's the one that has the tragedy of Macbeth.
Yeah,
coming out.
That's coming out.
I'm really excited about. Even though I'm not a massive Shakespeare fan, to be honest, it's like whatever, I don't care. But at the same time, I really enjoyed Macbeth with Fassbender and
Yeah.
when was that? Like 2016 was it that came out in 17? I'm not
Within
sure
the
who the
last couple of years, yeah.
director was, but like that kind of struck a chord with me because I was like, oh shit, I'm actually very emotionally invested in this, even though I don't really
Yeah.
care. And then I was thinking about like Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington, like they're two actors that are so intense,
Oh
like
yeah.
they have like prominent like presence, quite masculine energy, both of them. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what the fuck are they gonna bring to the table? And so far the reviews have been very, very positive. So I'm quite excited about that. And I think it's with I think it's by Joel Cohen,
Hmm.
um, her husband. But yeah, it's just like one of these things where I'm like, I I'm really excited when I see established directors like them push the boundary, because
Hmm.
I mean that seems like a boundary to me to do like a Shakespearean work at this point.
Especially when you look at the rest of the filmography, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So it's quite refreshing. Yeah, even though I never considered them to be my favorite directors, but I
Yeah.
always respected them, and there is so much legacy that comes with them. Um, so there's that. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure what was the original question because I feel like you and I have had a few at this point where I'm like, but yeah, no, I just at the end of the day, I just like I want to make sure that whoever we talk about, like in terms of like I guess from a director standpoint, um, they have something to say.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm trying to argue with people, where it's like uh, I can take the example of Tarantino with the Hateful Eight, which is the one film that I just hated from him. It's like I had just kind of like I just stopped. I just stopped
Yeah.
watching. Like I can't.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what he's trying to say with that film. And again, I'm not saying it was a bad piece of filmmaking. I'm just like I
Hmm.
don't care. And I think we need to do the same thing with every single director out there right now, because there is so much noise coming out of like the film studios and the streaming services, where it's like we need to actually make sure we use our energy when it comes to watching, critiquing, interpreting, analyzing to the works that actually matter. Because like you and I, like, sure, you can argue we have plenty of free time. We actually don't. Like we need to
Yeah.
make sure we use that time on the filmmakers of tomorrow that have something to say. And you could argue that these are people like Chloe Zhao and like
Yeah.
people like that, but like whoever that might be. um I'm actually okay at this point and quite comfortable and just being like, oh sure, I've loved like 80% of the works from this director, let's say Edgar Wright, but like 20% of it hasn't quite felt as authentic
Yeah.
or as real as I would have expected. So I'm happy to take a step back to be like, that's not for me.
You know what's, yeah, exactly. I think what's interesting is, and what you just said makes me think of is Willem Dafoe talked about how
Hmm.
he was walking around in his neighborhood, like his local theater, and he went in and he saw the poster for The Witch,
Hmm.
Robert Eggers is The Witch, and he said that he was like, oh, that looks weird, and he watched it, and he said he walked out of that theater thinking that he wanted to work with Eggers, and that Eggers was a director who felt like they needed to tell that story, which is
Oh,
why
wow.
he wanted to work with him. And I think that's a very interesting point, is because I couldn't agree with you more in the idea that there's much more of an enticing captivation from a viewer's standpoint when you feel like you can almost see the director on screen saying like, this is what I'm trying to tell you with a
Hmm.
film.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I completely agree that that is nowhere to be seen in the Hateful Eight.
Mm.
While I love the theater, the theatrical aspect of it all, I couldn't agree more in that if I had never seen the Hateful Eight, I think that you always take something away from a movie theater experience,
Yeah.
whether if it's meaningful. And that was not a theater experience where I walked out of it and I was like, I'm gonna think about things differently. And I agree with you on that. I think it's very rare, especially for someone as flashy as Tarantino, to find a message like that. I think they're very far and few between with his movies. But yeah, I think that's always something, especially for people who, you know what, like just frankly, who appreciate it on a level that some people don't. I think that you're always looking for that like, you know, small nail in the haystack of like, this is the message I'm trying to put out through the filmmaking that most people don't either think about or put energy into.
That's a very eloquent way of putting it. Yeah, without just start to shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Damn, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, coming up on 3. This is gonna be a good one.
Yeah. How are your notes coming along? Are we tracking?
I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, basically, I normally, if I've got the time, I like to see a movie twice in theaters, and on the second time I'll take notes. But as soon as I got out of the theater, I opened up I didn't want to look down at all, especially for this film. But as soon as I got out of the theater, I went and I started writing like immediately. I went to the concession stand and I used the counter. I just had to get thoughts down because I know that I'll tell myself, just think about it later and you'll get the idea. But no, it never happened. So I had to get those thoughts down first.
You know who the worst people are? Well, because I experienced that during London Film Festival a lot, where I was actually doing press screenings with other press people, and fuck, you have these people that actually have a notebook and they write notes while watching a film.
I can't do that the first time.
It's difficult because I think it, like, on the one hand, again, I'm trying to see the experience of critiquing from their point of view, but at the same time, like, while you're writing, the film is playing. It's not waiting for you to write down your notes.
Exactly.
So by the time you're done, you might have missed like 5 different elements of film you might have wanted to talk about, but you're just too concentrated in the critique side of things as opposed to actually consuming the film.
Well, I mean, it's comparable to doing your laundry during a movie, except, I mean, you may be thinking critically about like a one moment, but at the speed of how everything is moving, you've missed so much more, which is like, also, I mean, it's comparable to the idea of you're putting your attention away from the movie in that moment. And sure, you may be thinking about whatever you're thinking about, but you're not focusing on receiving. You're more focusing on expelling, if that makes any sense. And it's like, exactly. I saw 1917 in theaters, and I was staying up at this house in this small town at the time, and the theater was a very small theater. They only had one theater, and they were showing it. And I went, and I was the only one in the theater, and I was watching, and I was like, this is good. I hope no one fucking comes, and I get to just enjoy and watch this. And that movie was a real fucking roller coaster. And then the next day I went back to the theater and no one showed up again. And that's when I was like, all right, you experience, like, I don't want to ever, it's why I don't like going with people to the movie theater the majority of the time, is because even if it's just like moving around or like, don't talk to me when I'm watching a movie in the theater. Why would you, like, look forward? And like, can you sit straight and look forward for 2 hours? Is that too much for you? You know?
Yeah.
And but it's very much that. But I also think it's like writing in a Starbucks, you know, when people like take their laptop out in a Starbucks and they're just like, I hope someone asks me about what I'm writing right now. It's very much like, I don't know. I guess that's just me trying to also separate myself from being like, those people that take notes are wrong. The way you take notes is right.
Like,
That's where the narcissism comes in, I guess.
yeah, jazz music in the background, trying to like seem important. No, I get it. I can't. I don't know. I just don't feel like it's very fair to the filmmaking
Yeah.
output, to be honest with you. But you know, I mean, who am I to judge? I guess some film critics just like to write during the, I don't know, film watching experience, which I feel like it's yeah, it's just very unfair. But
Yeah.
it is what it is, I guess. I just find it quite distracting, to be honest, because like, okay, at the end of the day, I'm like, whatever. I don't get to control what you put out there and how you want to experience a film. It's
Mhm.
not within, like, yeah, whoever, like whatever. But at the same time, what I was mostly concerned about is that I actually felt distracted, right? Because if you have someone literally next to you writing down
Yeah,
notes,
no.
just like, yeah, sure, yeah, I don't know, I just caught myself going there a few times, and I have to say I'm not like a cinema purist kind of person, because I know there are, like in London, for example, there are a few cinemas that don't even serve popcorn, because you're like, oh, you need to experience this, like
That's pretty interesting.
like in the most like pristine way, like make zero sound, don't
Yeah.
fart, don't burp, like literally don't be a person, like
Yeah.
honestly, just breathe, just watch the film, super dim lights, like honestly. And I am not in favor of that camp, because I feel like we're all humans. If you feel like you need to burp, sure, that's fine. It's part of the human experience. It's okay.
Mhm.
I don't want you to struggle. And number two, I'm also okay with you eating popcorn next to me, because I like eating popcorn next to me, because that's the only acceptable like snack that you can
Yeah. Yeah.
have during, like, that's
Dude,
fine.
some movie theaters in America, I don't know about anywhere else in America, they serve hot
Yeah,
dogs.
yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But
I
like,
don't know why. When I think of hot, I'm like, you should go to a baseball game and eat a hot dog. You're eating a hot dog at a movie theater? Like a whole,
yeah.
you need your whole hand for that.
Yeah, I'm not judging, because I mean we do have them here in the like more mainstream
Mhm.
like theaters, like Odeon or something like that. But like at the same time, like you're gonna have the hot dog in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
not,
yeah, that's right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
you can just down it. Like, like maybe
Okay, okay. I
yeah.
completely understand. I agree 100%. You're
And this is
exactly right.
why I feel like the thing is, I'm tracking with you in terms of like, I don't feel like a hot dog is the best movie snack, because yeah, you can just have it in 2 seconds,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
for me, if you are to have something that you can have throughout the film, whether
That
it's
you
like,
can go like that with.
yeah,
They're
popcorn,
up.
grapes, I don't fucking know, something that you can just, yeah, have throughout the film. Because a hot dog, yeah, it's very popular here as well, but I mean, how long are you gonna chew on a fucking hot dog?
I'm so because I go to also baseball games. It's very much like it's like you wouldn't bring barbecue to like a tea lunch or anything. I don't know. It's very uh,
Mm,
outside of the world for me. I would
right.
never. And I completely agree. It's like you're not gonna sit there with a hot dog for 2 hours and take a bite of it. But like it's very much you're gonna be like, all right, 1, 2, 3, and then you're probably gonna get it done before the trailers. But
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Yeah.
that's exactly right. There's a theater chain in America called the Alamo.
Yeah, I love them. Yeah.
Yeah, where I
Yeah.
mean, I what's interesting is I love the Hitchcock rules. I love the idea of like, is everyone aware of the rules? Okay, good. Follow the rules, or you go somewhere else. I love
Mm.
the like how Alfred Hitchcock used to have a standout of himself outside
Mhm.
the theater doors of himself pointing at his watch after the
Mm.
movie started. So it's like if you're late, you're not getting in, and that's very it's very Alfred Hitchcock. But something about that is very much like, hey man, we all know the fucking rules. You want to open the door and ruin everyone else's experience, like have the light cast on everything as soon as you walk inside and everyone's looking around waiting for the door to close. And yeah, it's very much, that's when you think about the entire movie theater going experience, the entire idea of like, oh yeah, you're also in a room full of people.
But I think, but yeah, for sure. And I think with like this kind of, for lack of a better term, chains, even though, yeah, Alamo, I mean, they are a chain. I would say the equivalent here would be Picture House. But at the end of the day, the equivalent is that they do make you feel like you're part of something bigger. Like even like these like references of things like from directors and things like that, you're like, oh shit, I'm part of something that's bigger than
Exactly.
myself, which is something that franchises or like multiplex screens are failing to do. Like I'm not like, I'm guessing in the US would be the AMC potentially. Like here it's Odeon, which is like super big, but at the same time they offer a very mediocre experience in a way. With like screens are
Absolutely.
small, popcorn is very overpriced. Yeah, like it doesn't quite feel right. So I like that idea of going back to the sense of like making it like investing in the community aspect of it all, which is like we know the trivia, like we know the quote, like we know where this director is coming from, like we know the references, and like these companies can tell you something that can make you instantly feel at ease, as in like you belong and you can go on your own. Like similar to you, I very much go to films on my own because I'm like, there's no point. Because the thing is like, people think of the movie going experience like, oh, I need to do this with a date or like with a friend. Like
which also like I've always talked about how like the worst first date, it's so common, you see it everywhere in movies and TV and people. It's the worst first date, going to a movie theater. It's the worst.
Like, the purpose of a date is to actually get to know each other, and like by going to a movie, it's like you literally don't talk. So like for me, that like the whole like social bonding experience isn't quite elevated by going to a cinema to watch a film. I think it very much helps if you're, I don't know, if you're going with a best friend or if you're going with someone you've been together for a very long time, because you can bond about it afterwards. But I feel like as a first date or like as something that you're like doing on your own, it feels a bit awkward in the beginning. So yeah, I love the idea of these like more indie, and I would say Alamo is indie, right? They're not owned by anyone. Yeah. Like that element of just belonging, essentially, which is what you and I are trying to do on our social channels, but like making people feel included in specific conversations. And I think that's the best we can hope for. We don't have like a massive platform, but like the people that we have and the people that are looking up to us, like I feel like it's we hold a certain amount of, I would even go as far to say, responsibility to just be like, hey, you know what, like I'm not here to get this right every single time, but what I can guarantee for you is that you're gonna get the truth from me. And if you want to talk about a certain film, I'm here for you. If you want to like debate me on something, I'm also here for you. I'm not here to ghost you every time you disagree with me, because that's also very common, right?
It's so common that it's expected. As soon as someone shares a different, like someone's almost ready on the block button.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, once you start genuinely engaging these people, I'm sure you've seen the same reaction. People are much more friendly and inviting, because like again, I'm sure you've faced similar, you've had similar DMs as myself, but And I have to say, like, my community is very positive for the most part, but like every once in a while I will get like a pushback from someone where they're like, oh, it's interesting you said that, I'm seeing this in a very different light. And like, cool, let's talk about it. And the moment I say that, they're like, oh shit, I had no idea you were going to respond to my DM. So
Yeah.
people are so quick to shit on what you have to say. And the moment you acknowledge them and you're like, that's fair. That's fair. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Oh my God. By the way, I love your page.
Yeah, it's exactly how it goes every single time too, because they go in with hostility, expecting hostility, because it's like the battlefield of the internet, is someone being like, I like dogs, and someone else being like, you fuck you for liking dogs, and then that's exactly how it starts. And especially with something with concepts so goddamn subjective, like the one thing I try to always respond with, unless they're being particularly, shitty, then I like to have fun. But if someone will say something like, I completely disagree, I thought this was bad, or whatever, it's always, no one's ever confident enough just to put like a sentence being like, I didn't like this. It's always paragraphs long, explaining their point of view, which is like, that's, what, you're right or whatever. But my response is always, that's sorry that you didn't like it. Sucks that you didn't like it. And it's always towards the comments being like, this is the worst thing I've ever, this is worse than this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. That I've always see those. And especially running a page like mine, it's like, I'm going to see the more other end of the spectrum type of people. But it's exactly that. And my automatic response is to remind, even if it's just saying like, oh, well, that sucks you didn't like it. It's like a subtle reminder that, hey man, you're not writing like scripture here. You're not creating law. You're sharing a subjective experience
of the present, right? Because it's always like, and I'm sure you felt very similarly, but we can only speak about the experience of today. Because the thing is, if I were to watch a film that I saw 3 years ago and I watch it today, again, I might have a very different perspective on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's also very important in terms of like clarifying when you watched it, how many times you watched it, because I have felt that my perspective on certain films has changed over time. And
Absolutely.
then there are other films that I'm like, oh shit, no matter how many times I watch this film, it's not gonna change. Like, or directors like David Lynch, I just don't like him. No. Like, maybe, okay, to be a bit more fair, I'm sure he's great, but like
don't be fair. Don't filter yourself whatsoever. I want to hear every second.
As in, like, I don't know him personally, so I'm sure he's a great person, but I don't share. I think the best way to describe is like, I don't share his worldview. I don't like the way he sees the world and how he depicts that into like his own,
and how he translates it.
It's very nihilistic, and I don't share that. It's fair. I'm sure it's going to resonate with people that are a bit more pessimistic in life, or just see things a bit more binary. I'm not that kind of person. I hated Mulholland Drive. I think it's one of the worst films that I've ever seen in my entire life. But at the same time, I want to take a step back and recognize that there are so many people out there that love his cinema. So he must be talking to a certain crowd that I can't quite feel like I'm a part of. So this is what I'm trying, like, separate the person from the experience. And even though I respect him as a filmmaker, obviously he's done so many incredible pieces of work that he's put out there. I haven't seen like Twin Peaks, so I've heard from people that that's a different take on his. I don't know, to be honest with you, but like the films that I've seen, like Blue Velvet, like all, just like, no.
I completely understand, but that's what separates you. that is very, that's no, but I mean, like, that's what's very appealing, is the idea of not many people can make that rational, I was gonna say healthy, and that's a word that works too, but it's a rational distinction, is being able to go to be able to not link or identify with any bit of it, because I think that's it happens more often than people want to admit. I think most people, if it's something, I think that very often a lot of people kind of instantly intertwine with something, even if they don't think positively on it, but because it's what is popular, or because it's the next thing or whatever. But not enough is it where that rational thinking of, this is not something I click with, but there's an automatic, like, just sheer like base respect. You know what I mean? I think that is lost very easily with, I mean, now especially, that's not even where most people start, because I feel like that has to be an instant baseline, is the idea of like the acknowledgement of, you know, not identifying with any bit of it, but understanding the weight it still holds, because clearly, I mean, there will be an audience for everything.
What do you think of him, or like his work?
It's very interesting, because it's very, I love how fucking weird it is. I'll always appreciate, I also am very big on who said it recently, the idea of the creator of The Sopranos is very much like, you don't get all the answers. It will always, if not even just that, like, it's very much the ambiguity. It's very much if it's fucking weird and you don't click with it, and if it's weird, then, and I can't identify with it, or if I can't kind of move into the rhythm of it, I will still be like, thank God, at least it was weird. At least it wasn't boring and I didn't enjoy it. At least it was something that pushed some sense of fucking boundary, or made people, I guess, double think something for a second. You know, I would very much rather someone give me something that I come out of not enjoying, but appreciating that it was, I don't know, that you don't see weird shit anymore. No one's, you know what I mean? No one wants to, and because it's a huge gamble to be like, and then this fucking happens. Like, you know how much I fucking love that they ended Enemy with that shot of the spider? Like, that's that kind of weird shit. And yeah, it relates to the movie, but it's like, put that in the end of any movie. Put that in like any random movie, and it doesn't have to make any sense or anything. But I love the decision to be like, this is gonna happen. And I think it's actually there's this one thing in Twin Peaks. I haven't seen it, but I saw a clip of it somewhere. And it's really, really bad computer generation. It's like very simple, bad effects on a guy sitting in a chair. And Lynch, he's very much a proponent of putting his opinion out there and saying, take it or leave it. But his opinion, his like idea was like, yeah, it was meant to be as bad as it could and still get as far as it did. I guess it makes no sense, but the idea of, but that also plays into what I love about directors when I like something, is if it's 100% itself, that there's an instant idea of like, yeah, I can see eye to eye on that, even if the content is not something I enjoy.
Yeah, I think there's a very big difference between respect and resonance in a way. It was like, and I share that with Lynch, where it's like, you're so fucking uncompromising.
Yeah.
And there is so much respect that comes with that, because there have been so many directors that have basically sold themselves to the devil somewhere down the line. And I can see that. And this is why I actually like him. I feel like, and when I say him, I mean like the interviews that I've seen of him, like there is something quite authentic there and something pure. So I love that. It's just his vision, and yet to the extension of that, his worldview that I can't quite share. That's a bit difficult for me. So and that's totally fine, and I'm sure he would agree. But yeah, it's I think that's what's important, like, or separating the person from the vision, where it's like, I value you as a filmmaker because you're not doing this for the sake of like selling out. You're doing this
Yeah.
because this is literally where you're coming from. And you know you're not going to have everyone on your side. And
Mhm.
it takes a lot of bravery to do that. I recognize that.
Yeah.
Um,
The exact opposite of that acknowledgement is the exact opposite of that sense of realization. And I love that distinction between respect and resonance. I think that's a great point. But yeah, the exact antithesis of that is the people who hear, and I it's so annoying to keep bringing it back to that because but it takes up so much of the fucking atmosphere. Is people who automatically reject any criticism, like especially like Scorsese and Villeneuve and
hmm,
on the Marvel movies, and it's exactly that though. But it's that sense of like, what's that? They said something critical on something I obsess about. Well, who the fuck
hmm,
are they? And that's the
hmm,
exact difference. Is there's not that distinction between respect and resonance, because the automatic response is, who even knows of a Scorsese movie that's not Goodfellas? And it's like, are you
yes,
serious? Like,
yes,
really?
yes.
Goodfellas is also Scorsese's version of Nolan's Interstellar and Pulp Fiction and all that. That's exactly
Woo!
that.
The hot take.
Really? I mean, that's all I hear. Like, I think I fucking love Casino so much more than Goodfellas, but all I hear about is Goodfellas from people, you know?
That's
But
true.
yeah.
That's true. That's true. I need to sit with that. Yeah, because that's a very interesting analogy. But yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Cool.
All right. I think 3 hours and 15 minutes is a solid jumping off point. Now, what did you think of? No. All right. Let's tell people where they can. If you're still listening after 3 hours, um, where can
Hopefully, it's
they
gonna
find
be a
you?
two-parter, right? Like that's
No,
gonna be
I'm gonna make it a three-parter, I think.
right. 'Cause, yeah, 3 hours is yeah. You can't.
Yeah.
No, no. Hi. No. Yeah. I mean, for the time being, I'm just on Instagram. That final scene. It's very much a spoiler page, so I'm very sorry about that in advance. That said, I am trying to use shots that are not very spoilery. One, and number two, I am trying to talk about films that are fairly old. So again, like going back to No Time to Die, I'm not gonna talk about it
Mhm.
in at least 6 months to a year. So yeah, I don't know. I just This has been such a refreshing experience, like talking to you for 3 hours straight about film, and I just realized, one, how much like one a great of an experience it is to talk with people like you that are so knowledgeable and talented about film and whatever the fuck, like industry filmmakers. It's been so much fun. So yeah, like let's do this more regularly. Like I think
Absolutely.
that's something we need to explore. And yeah, number two, as I said in the beginning, this has been a bit of an existential crisis for me in the past few months. So you might see new things coming out of whatever the fuck the Instagram page is, but for the time being, expect final scenes, interpretations, and the occasional hot take on the latest film coming out of the bullshit studios that kind of overall world right now.
All right, that's perfect. You can follow the podcast on YouTube, my YouTube channel, and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. How's it going to end? Leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts because that helps, and I'm not too good at telling you guys to do that. And you can follow. I don't imagine anybody that doesn't know me just found this to listen to me. So I imagine like most people are coming from my or your Instagram. So I'm not going to tell people to follow me on Instagram because that seems redundant. But yeah, and goodbye. And that's where I'm going to cut it. And this was so fucking fun, dude.
This was so fun. 3 hours. We could make a movie out of it.